This is I Don't Speak German. I'm Jack Graham, he, him, and in this podcast I talk to my friend Daniel Harper, also he, him, who spent years tracking the far right in their safe spaces. In this show we talk about them and about the wider reactionary forces feeding them and feeding off them. Be warned, this is difficult subject matter. Content warnings always apply. And welcome to episode 100. Episode 100 of I Don't Speak German, the podcast that you know what this podcast's about. There's been 100 bloody episodes. And it's the week before Christmas. As Maya Angelou once said, I believe, you can tell a lot about a person from how they handle several things, including, rain, lost luggage, and tangled Christmas tree lights. So watch out for those bastards that can do it without getting annoyed. I'm sure that's what she meant.
Yeah, certainly.
But this isn't a Christmas episode because I don't think goodwill to all men is on my agenda anyway.
To good men, to good people of all genders, really, but not to the subject of our episode. I mean,
not all.
Generally, I Don't Speak German does not. We do not seek goodwill towards the subjects of our episodes. That's generally not the way that it works, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. So not all men. That's my point. Yeah, not all men. There you go. I accidentally said something funny. And before we get into it, I just want to say one thing. Bell Hooks died this week.
Yep.
And that is huge. And Bell Hooks is huge for me, as she was for many, many people. Incredibly important and brilliant scholar. And there's so much to be said about Bell Hooks, and it's not going to be said by me, and it's not going to be said here in the time we have. So I just wanted to acknowledge it. And
right, and only 69 as well. I mean, that's not particularly aged. That's still young enough to where it does feel like a surprise.
It does.
And I've seen a lot of
we've been cheated.
I've seen a lot of accounts really kind of people that I respect in all fields just kind of pouring out a lot of respect for her over the last couple of days. And it's sad.
Tragic. I just wanted to mark it. Yep. And this episode is, I don't know if it's really appropriate, but this episode is dedicated to her memory.
Fair enough. Now let's talk about Kyle Rittenhouse.
From the sublime to the
we will learn about Kyle Rittenhouse in this episode.
We will. So, yeah. I'm really not in the best of moods, listeners, because Daniel just sent me the Google Drive link to the clips that's going to be included in this episode, and I've just listened to them all in quick succession. And that's really put a crimp on my mood. Let me put it that way. So that's what you've got to look forward to over the course of this episode.
Yeah, very, very festive episode. There's a reason that sometimes I don't send Jack the links until just before we start recording. Usually, ideally, it's best either like a day before or like immediately before. But like having the hour and change. But I spent all day getting them together. So for the amount of time that Jack's been listening, I've listened to like 10 to 50 times that long today. So
Daniel and I are not in competition on this. I mean, he's done the work. He's been listening to it for hours and hours. He has a right to be more pissed off than me. I'm just saying, I just crash coursed all the clips in like 20 minutes. And I'm not in the best of moods. Let's put it that way.
And that is basically a selected list of like terrible things as well. That's like almost the canonically, the getting them all at once like that is you're getting all the worst bits. So So let's dig into this, shall we? No further ado.
Let's get into it. Yeah.
Okay.
Because this episode is, firstly, it is episode 100. So, yay us. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for making it happen. You are the people that made it happen, really. Because if you didn't show up, there wouldn't be any point. So thank you for that. And B, yes, the subject of this episode is, B is if we don't see you again before Christmas, so to speak, or the winter season holiday, whatever it is of any type that you celebrate, if indeed you celebrate any, have a good one, or just have a good late December if we don't see you before that, so to
Agreed.
speak. Absolutely. And C is the subject of this episode, which is I think it's specifically the media reaction to Kyle Rittenhouse post verdict, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's Kyle Rittenhouse. So for those listening in the future who may not remember, or kind of whatever, Kyle Rittenhouse is the young man who at 17 became the Kenosha Kid in August of 2020.
Orson Welles is the Kenosha Kid. Thank you.
Yes, Orson Welles, the brilliant Orson Welles, who Jack and I are both great fans of, is the true Kenosha Kid. But he got dubbed that in sort of right wing circles after he shot and killed two. He killed two protesters in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and seriously injured a third. So and then tried to kind of surrender to the police. At least that's his telling of it. He had his hands up, and the cops let him go. And then he turned himself in the next day. And this has been an absolute media firestorm, really in all, kind of sections of discourse, at least in kind of my knowledge. But the right wing and the kind of the dipshits that are the kind of like heavily online right have really kind of run with this kid. And so this is part one of a kind of a loose two-parter. It's not kind of an official two-parter, but I wanted to talk about how not the overt Nazis, but these sort of like adjacent to Nazis are kind of treating this Rittenhouse case, how the people who actually have some kind of pull within media are treating this this acquittal. And then next week we will kind of transition into talking about how the actual like kind of overt white nationalist and white supremacists are using some of these same events and some of the same narratives in order to push their overtly genocidal agenda. So it's going to be a great end of 2021. These two episodes are going to be just great fun for everybody. Very, very light, easy material to get through. So if you recall, I mean, I don't know, kind of, it's funny because I've been I've been up to my ears on this for a week now, but the initial reporting that we kind of got on the case originally it was based, there was a Twitter video that somebody had shot with a cell phone of, Rittenhouse, this kid who had just killed somebody. We later learned it's Joseph Rosenbaum, and he's standing and talking to a friend on a cell phone and said, "I think I just killed somebody," and then running off. And then we kind of, as he's running away, bunch of people, other protesters they see him running and decide to stop him. And in the scuffles that involved, he ends up shooting at another man and then killing a third man. And then he seriously injures a fourth. So there is a fourth person there who was shot at but missed. And he was actually not even identified in the trial. He was eventually identified. We know his name, but he's mostly gone by Jump Kick Man, because in the photos and videos, he's a man who jumped and tried to kick Kyle Rittenhouse in the head while Rittenhouse was down pointing his rifle at people.
I like Jump Kick Man. It has a pleasing Kennedy assassination lore feel about it.
It does, doesn't it? There's a lot of memories of the JFK assassination days in my head, looking at a lot of this video, because there is a lot of video to kind of go through and sort of analyze, and it's sort of and everybody's kind of drawn lots of Zapruders, everybody's kind of drawn little circles around stuff, and so you can get different people's interpretations of very grainy video, and there's a lot of stuff we just will never know about that night ultimately. And I'm not here to relitigate that. We kind of did a bonus episode that was like before the verdict came down, and I correctly predicted, no, Kyle Rittenhouse is going to be acquitted, because the ultimately the legal case is about, about Rittenhouse's feelings and about, all the, it isn't about sort of the larger questions of why were you there and what were you doing and, bringing a rifle to a protest. Like, by the laws of the state of Wisconsin, Kyle Rittenhouse was innocent. By at least he was not able to be proven guilty by beyond reasonable doubt. And so I think we can sort of acknowledge that, yes, the white supremacist laws of the state of Wisconsin in the United States agree with Kyle Rittenhouse.
This is the radical critique, I'm afraid, beyond the liberal reformist critique, which is, what he did wasn't very nice. It would have been nice if he'd been punished. No, I think the point here is that, these are the laws of a white supremacist, settler, colonial, capitalist, imperialist state. And by those fucked up laws, he's kind of legally not guilty.
Exactly. And, and the irony is that, we spend a lot of time talking about the prison industrial complex and those sorts of things. And ultimately, I think there is good evidence that the prosecutor behaved really badly in this case. I think that there were, manipulations of, it turned out
that's
that
what prosecutors do.
Exactly. It's not just because it's Kyle, they weren't out to get Kyle. They're out to fuck everything, that's the point. Which we covered recently, Chris Cantwell, are kind of returning to Cantwell thing. And, all of Cantwell's complaints about the conditions inside the prison and everything. Like, yes, that's what prison is. It's like the way for everyone, and, Rittenhouse is the same way. Rittenhouse, it was because of his celebrity and because of the way that the right-wing media kind of grabbed this that he managed to get the trial that he did ultimately. If it had been the other way around and it had been, if Rittenhouse had been killed by one of the people that Rittenhouse killed, it would absolutely have not become the kind of cause celebrity the way it was. And no doubt the hypothetical killer of Rittenhouse would have actually served time in prison.
Yeah, no doubt.
So I guess I say all that as preface to, we're not really going to talk that much about the case, but certain details of the case as we need them, I'll kind of remind people of. But there's this kind of sequence of events in which this immediately becomes this kind of social media phenomenon, and people are kind of arguing about it. Even before Rittenhouse is even caught, even before he's in any kind of legal limbo at all. Within minutes of the first video going viral, this becomes a conversation that's being had. And the right wing absolutely starts to congeal around this kid and use him as a symbol of a whole lot of different things. In fact, his original lawyers were Lynn Wood and John Pierce. Lynn Wood, who is... Yes. Lynn Wood, and then John Pierce, who is currently defending the shaman in the U.S. Capitol insurrection. Apparently, there are a bunch of grifting assholes, which you and I already knew because we just knew that. But apparently, they have Rittenhouse had to fire them because they were essentially trying to make him into a this militia figure, like a symbol of the militia. And, we're trying to kind of insert this kind of angle into it. And they almost certainly absconded with his $2 million bail money after he was released. A bunch of bad people all around. Ultimately,
a real bonfire of the vanities.
So I did include a link to a Rolling Stone piece that kind of details some of that. So we're not going to be covering it here. It is hilarious, though. So instead, what I want to do is we're going to start off, and because there's been a lot of material that's been released about this case, and a lot of kind of goes into what was kind of Rittenhouse's feelings at that time, how accurate is what he's saying now to what he was kind of saying then, and to what degree is his testimony on the stand, equal to what actually happened. And so there was some released video of the police interrogation of Rittenhouse when his mother was also present. This is Kyle Rittenhouse's mother talking on camera in the police interview while, basically the police have kind of stepped away. There's some question where Rittenhouse had asked, they had read him his Miranda rights. He had asked for a lawyer, but then said, no, I don't need a lawyer, because then they're like, well, we can't talk to you unless you get a lawyer now. And there were like questions of extradition, and like none of that is too interesting from our perspective necessarily, but I think it's important to note what's on Kyle Rittenhouse's mother's mind while her son is actively being interrogated by police. All right. So this is where we're going to start, right?
Yeah. And wait for the punchline, listeners, because this is hilarious.
Kyle, you have to look at his point, because with everything going on with social media, it's all blown up. It's cops against the thing, and civil people is out for whatever. You have to look at that point, because you're already labeled as a white supremacist gun person. You have to look at your safety and stuff like that. And what?
Can you stop talking, Mom?
Okay.
So that's from like earlier in the interview, and then I've spliced in a little bit of more conversations they had just before. They've already like taken Kyle's clothes, and he is about to be booked into jail. So this is like the last thing that Kyle Rittenhouse says to his mom, basically, before he's taken off into juvenile detention.
Yeah.
And you already tell my Snapchat information from Mackenzie.
And everything else.
I'll put it down to do my streaks.
Nope, you have to deactivate it.
He's talking about his Snapchat streaks, and streaks, I had to look it up. I'm not a Snapchat person, but they are, if you Snapchat with the same person multiple times within a 24-hour period, and you keep that going for days after days after days after days, you get a long streak. And so he's literally sitting here. He's about to be put in jail for murdering 2 people and previously injuring a third. And what's on his mind is, well, how about my Snapchat? I need to keep my social media engagement going. Will you just log in and do the streak so I can keep my streak going? That's what he's asking his mother in that moment. The clip continues.
Yeah, it's just want to make this point. By his own account of this event, he should be traumatized at this point, because, even if he's not traumatized about the fact that he, without wanting to or ever meaning to or planning to or intending to or expecting to, shot people, he should be, by his own account, traumatized by the fact that people tried to kill him.
Yeah, but, absolutely. And this is he's still wearing the same clothes he was wearing that night. Like that's how little time has elapsed at this point. Now, it's hard to make like hard and fast judgments of like how people respond to trauma, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not going to be here. I'm certainly not going to do it over a video and something that he was doing. But I think we can draw conclusions from the way that some of this transpires.
I think so.
Yep. Is that what they said?
Because they're going to harass you, because they can find you anywhere. You can always make a new one. Are you getting your Facebook login?
I don't know my Facebook.
Literally, he's sitting there. He's still talking about his streaks. He's still talking about his Snapchat stuff. And his mother is like, look, we got to delete all your social media because Antifa is going to come after you effectively, right? That's right, like that's what's in her mind, is we've got to keep Kyle safe because the big scary Twitter mob is going to come after him.
That's right. Yeah. The Antifa revenge mob is going to track him down.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Deploy one of their famous kill squads.
And, it is probably worth, noting that, to my knowledge, Kyle Rittenhouse has not been threatened, seriously by anyone after this. It's certainly not anyone like kind of, self-described anti-fascist. I would find that very, very unusual. But that's the narrative. That's the story that Kyle is telling about himself. That's the story. That's where their headspace is, right?
Yeah.
While they're, and
that's
I think
clearly a real and active threat, at least in his mother's mind, because this is the parallel universe that these people live in.
And the social media, the fact that social media is on her mind and his mind, and it's so present from the beginning, from literally the moments after he is, in the police station, says a lot. It says a lot about sort of the way that some of these events unfolded over the course of the year or so that the trial has gone forward. So I have one more thing to play from the police interview, and that's there's a bit where Kyle and his mother are crying, and as you know, Jack. One of the quote unquote highlights of the trial that sort of got people arguing in all directions was Kyle Rittenhouse breaks down on the stand when he's describing the actions that led him to kill Joseph Rosenbaum. And so I did kind of clip these together so you can compare the crying from both moments. And there is genuine trauma, at least in his mother's voice, and she is openly sobbing for her son. And I'm not in any way trying to take away from that, and I'm not in any way trying to mock that. This is really uncomfortable for me because I listened to this several times, and I know this is uncomfortable material. But I think it's worth having, for the record here, to kind of put these together, and again, let people make their own mind up about whether this kind of sounds similar or not. So let's just move on into that.
Look at me. It's okay. It's okay. I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna be okay. I know it's okay. I'll be okay. Mom, can you breathe? I know you have a heart attack. I need you to breathe. I'm okay, Kyle, breathe it. I know, but you're scaring me. I don't want you to do anything to happen. I need you. You got it.
All right, that's the interrogation room, and now we're about to hear the stuff on the stand.
As I'm walking towards to put out the fire, I drop the fire extinguisher and I take a step back.
Okay. When you step back from Mr. Zeminski, what's your plan?
My plan is to get out of that situation and go back north down Sheridan Road to where the car source lot number 2 was.
And did you get back? Were you able to go in a northerly direction?
I wasn't.
Describe what happens.
Once I take that step back, I look over my shoulder, and Mr. Rosenbaum was now running from my right side, and I was cornered from in front of me with Mr. Zeminski, and there were there were 3 people right there.
Take a deep breath, Kyle.
That's what I...
If anything, I think he's more composed in the interrogation room.
Look, I have my opinions about this. What I think isn't going to sway anybody one way or the other. People are going to make up their own minds. Ultimately, it doesn't matter, right? If this is my opinion. If those tears on the stand are completely genuine, if the distress is completely genuine, to me, it doesn't matter, because he chose to insert himself in that situation. He chose to take a deadly weapon into a situation like that. And he chose to fire it at people. In 100 other scenarios that we can think about, featuring different sorts of people, how they feel about the fact that it happened, how they felt at the time, doesn't signify.
No, absolutely. And the fact that even if we say, okay, he is suffering a real trauma on the stand there. Now, we're going to play some clips later on of him discussing the same incident. So just put a pin in that for now. But even if we admit his trauma there, it doesn't justify what he did on the day. And it doesn't even sort of justify the self-defense. Like, even if we agree with, he had a right to self-defense, at no point in any of these interviews that I have watched, and I have watched a lot of them, I've watched more than I'm playing on this show for sure. And at no point does he ever express any kind of real remorse for killing people. He says things like, I feel bad that I ended up in that situation, or that I put myself in that situation and I had to do that. But there's never a moment in which he says, maybe killing the unarmed Rosenbaum was actually the right choice to make. There's never a question in his mind that it's always, well, this is the decision I had to make. This is the thing that I had to do. And there's never any apologies to the families of the victims. And it literally never comes up, ever, you know? And, he has the right to feel that way, if that's what he wants to. And I have the right to think he's kind of a piece of shit for that. So actually, even if he was deeply traumatized on the stand, I think you should be traumatized after you killed people. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it. So after the acquittal, so it actually turns out that Tucker Carlson's people, at the Fox News people, had embedded journalists with Rittenhouse's trial team, at least in the last few days before the acquittal, and they shot footage from there, and apparently his defense attorney didn't even really approve of this. So he gave some interviews in which he was talking about no, this wasn't something we didn't pay for that. This wasn't what we wanted. This is, they came in and made this decision. And we're going to talk a little bit about Kyle Rittenhouse's own, feelings about some of these people. But, Tucker Carlson, has been making hay out of this the entire time about, this kid being railroaded for defending himself. And of course the criminal status
he was
of
on
the
this
victims.
like a fly on shit.
Oh yes. And Tim Pool was, nobody died down on this more than Tim Pool did, I think. And he did a celebratory live stream the day that Rittenhouse was acquitted. We're not playing any audio from that, but there was, they basically threw a party. If anything, Tim Pool thought, the verdict didn't go far enough, and that it should have been a mistrial with prejudice because of the horrifying behavior of the prosecutors, which we can even agree, believe me, we are not supporting prosecutors on this podcast, but that's how absolutely absurd some of these people got. But Tucker Carlson dined out on this, and he has produced a full documentary, a 20-minute documentary behind the paywall on his Fox Nation site, where he's kind of producing his Tucker Carlson originals, and we will not be playing
Tucker Carlson's on a real roll recently with these brilliant documentaries of his.
We are going to be kind of discussing that in the next episode. But he does get the very first interview with Kyle Rittenhouse after the acquittal, and this is how Tucker Carlson introduces Kyle in this kind of 18-minute clip, of which about 15 minutes is interview. He has a 2.5 minute or so intro, and this is the narrative that they're spinning around Kyle and about who Kyle is and what he did that night.
Yeah, this is how the gigantic bloated tick talks about the horse that it's attached to.
But what about Kyle Rittenhouse himself? What is he like? Apart from his testimony in court, few Americans have ever heard his voice. Over the next hour, we're going to let Kyle Rittenhouse speak for himself. You can make up your own mind what you think. But before we start, one observation, which you can't resist making. It's hard to ignore the yawning class divide between Kyle Rittenhouse and his many critics in the media. Rittenhouse comes from the least privileged sector of our society. During high school, he worked as a janitor and a fry cook to help support his family. Last year, he got into college at Arizona State, and he's very proud of it. In the world Kyle Rittenhouse grew up in, it is not a given that kids go to college. It's not even close. During the course of our long conversation, Kyle Rittenhouse struck us as bright, decent, sincere, dutiful, and hardworking. Exactly the kind of person you'd want many more of in your country. He's not especially political. He never wanted to be the symbol of anything. Kyle Rittenhouse just wanted to keep violent lunatics from setting fire to cars.
So I do just want a couple of pins here.
I've got the checklist here. Fascist bullshit. Tick, 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 tick.
Exactly. A class divide between the media elites and Kyle Rittenhouse, which is that's not the relevant comparison in the slightest. Kyle Rittenhouse comes from the least privileged members of our society, and I'm pretty sure there are people who are less privileged than Kyle Rittenhouse. I'm sure he has not lived the greatest life. I mean, he is a teenager who worked menial jobs that teenagers do. I was also once an American teenager working those kinds of shitty jobs, and frankly, have worked shitty jobs for most of my adult life as well. So, it's a thing that people do, and not all of them end up murdering people. At a Black Lives Matter protest in response. But this is how they're framing him as the lone teenage hero who went in and who did what the government wasn't willing to do. They weren't going to pull out the National Guard and put these riots down. And instead, Kyle Rittenhouse had to go out and defend, innocent people of color, the people who owned the car dealership that he was protecting that night, are people of, I believe, Middle Eastern descent. So, and they always will kind of use that and say like, well, this can't be about white supremacy because, these particular car dealerships were not owned by white people. And of course, I don't think you're listening to my voice and need me to explain why that's utter horseshit at this point. But it is. It's a very, very standard narrative that all of these guys that outside of the overtly white nationalist side of this, they will always kind of use those kinds of talking points. And Tucker is like right on the message with this stuff. He is absolutely pushing. It is absolutely a straight up fascist agenda with this kid. Not overtly anti-Semitic, right? And not overtly, it's more covert than overt. And I think that it's fascinating the way that works.
Well, these are big complex issues, and again, they're not going to be laid out in detail by me here. It's not what we're doing this episode. But modern day fascism is not necessarily overtly anti-Semitic. It's not necessarily overtly whites only. That's just not how it works anymore. That's not, if you had an actual historical material and structural understanding of what fascist politics is, you would understand that these surface phenomena can change while the underlying structure of the phenomenon of fascism remains essentially the same. But by that kind of proper material understanding of fascism, Tucker is absolutely a fascist, and he's hitting all the notes there, as you say. He's painting his own viewpoint and Rittenhouse's and Tucker's own by extension as apolitical. Despite the fact that this kid chose to insert himself into this protest with armed. He's painting protests as lunatics burning American cities to the ground, as they always do. He's hitting every checkpoint.
Yeah, Rittenhouse himself will say, I'm not political. I'm not political at all. And I couldn't even vote. I was 17. I couldn't even vote. I wasn't political. And then like 15 minutes later, we'll say, oh no, I've been a fan of Steven Crowder's for like the last 3.5 years because he's hilarious. And it was him doing the change my mind thing on college campuses that really got me to be a fan of his. And like, you cannot both be a fan of Steven Crowder and call yourself apolitical, even if you are not actually able to vote. It's he chose to insert himself into a Black Lives Matter protest situation with a gun under the impression that was necessary. That is political. That comes from a particular political place. Obviously. Well, Rittenhouse actually supports Black Lives Matter, Jack. I mean, we've got him saying this right here. I think we should just go ahead and play that, don't you?
We're going to get to that bit. Yeah. Should we get to it now?
Let's just go ahead and do it. It's short. It's the shortest clip, and then we can kind of backtrack slightly. But yeah, we'll go ahead and do that now.
Why do you think people were burning car source? What does that have to do with civil rights?
I don't know. I think it was opportunists taking advantage of the BLM movement. I agree with the BLM movement. I agree everybody has the right to protest and assemble, but I do not agree that people have the right to burn down. I don't appreciate that people are burning down American cities to try to spread their message. I think there's other ways to go around and do that.
Well, I agree with that completely.
And there you go. That's how it works now. That is how fascism works now. You say, "Oh no, I'm in favor of equal rights for everybody. I'm in favor of the right to protest. I just don't think anything that anybody protesting against the structural inequality and the structural oppression and the structural violence against the oppressed that you tacitly support and you want to continue. I don't think anything that they're currently doing is justified." That's how it works now.
Yeah, I support BLM is, it's the ass covering of, well, I think that, people should be treated equally and they should have right to protest, but not do anything that actually will cause change, not anything that will, and no one really, and occasionally in some of these other shows he's been on, people will kind of poke and prod and kind of go like, you said you support BLM, but those people are like, rioters and and kind of they'll paint the like BLM as a terrorist organization kind of thing, but they know they can't really push that too hard because A, they're fucking liars, and B, Rittenhouse then has to sort of answer on he either has to like call them out for selling this false narrative, or he has to admit that no, I actually don't support Black Lives Matter. I just said that because it made me sound better on in the interviews I'm doing. It's I would be very fascinated to like get someone to actually ask Kyle Rittenhouse exactly what he does and does not support about Black Lives Matter and what that means to him. It's fascinating to watch them dance around this is what I'm saying. So yeah.
And that dance is exemplified in the bit where Tucker asks him, well, what do you think that civil rights has to do with people burning down car dealerships? And Rittenhouse, this 17 or 18-year-old kid who
he's 18 now, but yeah.
He's 18 now. Yeah, he has no answer at all. He's just, I don't know. But there's no attempt to actually understand the sociology, the material history, the real political structural reasons for things like riots. Riots being the language of the unheard, etc. There is no good faith questioning. There is no good faith attempt to understand why protests sometimes become riots here. This is performative, and the performance is in aid of smearing a social movement which is trying to change entrenched structural injustice that these people tacitly and quietly support.
Exactly. And the whole logic is I had to go, even if we accept his narrative of it, I had to go and protect this property and these buildings from rioters and looters. And then I ended up I was in a situation where I had to defend myself, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The human lives that were taken that night, and the only person who took lives that night, which, the prosecution, pointed out quite ably, out of the many hundreds, if not thousands of people who were involved in protests in Kenosha at that time, the only person who ever took a life was Kyle Rittenhouse. That every single other person was involved in the same level of, doubt and the chaos. And, even if you accept all this as, reasonable justification, only Kyle Rittenhouse ever actually killed anyone. And that really does speak to something. And we will never know exactly what sequence of events there's a lot of kind of conflicting testimonies, I would be shocked if Rittenhouse's like account of events is in any way, just straightforwardly true. I think it matches what we know of what the video, like he had a lot of time to sit and watch these videos and know exactly what was and was not on camera. And it's funny to like listen to his trial testimony, which I listened to I put a link to all 14 days of trial of testimony in the trial in the show notes here. I didn't listen to all of it, but I watched like all of Kyle Rittenhouse's personal testimony. And it's amazing to listen to him talk on the stand and then to listen and then to like watch the videos, because he describes this very kind of orderly sequence of events in which I was walking here, I went to this place, I was offering aid, I was carrying a fire extinguisher, I went from here to there because I was asked to do this thing, etc. Like there's a lot of, kind of back and forth on that matter. It sounds very logical and coherent, and and then suddenly Joseph Rosenbaum just shows up out of nowhere and like throws a bag at me, and I feared for my life. That's, but you watch the videos and it's utterly chaotic, back and forth. And, it's hard to know what anyone is actually doing at any given time. And so it's like a night and day difference between sort of the tone that Rittenhouse gives in his testimony of like these very precise, kind of clipped answers. I mean, this is, look, he's coached. He's got a good defense lawyer. Yeah. This is what you do. I'm not complaining about that in that way, but the version of events that he's telling just simply doesn't match the chaotic nature of what was clearly going on. And so it is this very kind of prepared, streamlined narrative that he's telling, because it got him off at trial. And that's the truth of the matter. I played you the breaking down crying clip on the stand when he's talking about shooting Rosenbaum, shooting his first victim. That was on November, I believe that's November 12th is that actual trial date. On November 24th, when he is sitting down with Tucker Carlson, he is again asked about that same incident. Let's see if he breaks down crying this time. What do you think? What do you think?
Where did you first see Rosenbaum?
The first time I saw Rosenbaum was the first time he threatened to kill me. It was at the corner of the car source lot that I was at primarily that night, and I was asking people if they needed medical, and he came up to me and Ryan Balch and he said, "If I catch any of you MFers alone, I'm going to effing kill you."
So just breaking in here, Ryan Balch, who Rittenhouse mentions that day, I was not aware of this when we did our little bonus episode, but Ryan Balch was not just a Boogaloo boy. He was an openly anti-Semitic Boogaloo boy who had a lot of really terrible social media posts. And then when that was revealed, he came up with some story about how, oh no, I was just infiltrating. I didn't really believe all this stuff. I was just trying to, but yeah, the person that he's talking about there, very likely an open anti-Semite, hard to say like literal Nazi without having a little bit more evidence to go, but like, truly awful fucking human being. These are your buddies here. Anyway, I just wanted to dive in and just pick out that little tidbit there.
Ever seen him before?
I have not.
So you'd never seen this guy. He walks up and threatens to kill you out of nowhere.
Yes. It was quite shocking. I was like, why would somebody threaten to kill me? I'm just asking if people need help on both sides. I was there just to help anybody that needed, and shockingly, the only people I helped that night were rioters.
What kind of sense did you get from Rosenbaum? I mean, that sounds deranged.
When he threatened to kill me, I was like, what the heck just happened? I've never nobody's ever threatened to kill me up until that point. And I was like, that's not something you say to somebody.
How long after that was it that he tried to grab your rifle?
It was about an hour and a half later, and then there was actually a second time he said to the group, he said, this is the second time he threatened to kill everybody. He said, I'm gonna effing kill you. I'm gonna cut your hearts out, you effing N-words.
Cut your hearts out?
Yes.
Did any of the rioters try and calm him down or stop him?
What I noticed is the rioters were trying to they were disassociating with him because he was spewing the N-word around, and they just didn't seem to want to have anything to deal with him, the rioters.
Yeah. So let's a little bit of detail here about Rosenbaum.
Can I just say one thing? It's fascinating to me how protesters have just completely disappeared from this account. There's just rioters.
Right, exactly. It's just rioters. It's all, and of course that's deliberately chosen language. I mean, look, we deliberately choose language as well, but this is a media operation at this point. Rittenhouse knows what to say and what not to say. Oh, I'm not political. I couldn't even vote at the time. Oh, I'm just going to use the word rioter 500 times. We're just going to, we're not. I support BLM, but I seem to have no idea about anything regarding anything in context here, right? And of course, this is incredibly self-serving testimony, and obviously this is a testimony, but this is a narrative that he has built for himself, in which no one else was doing anything to. Rosenbaum was this violent person who was out there threatening to kill people. Rosenbaum has had legal issues he had legal issues his entire life. He was convicted of molesting at least 5 children. All right.
Yeah.
He was also someone who was molested himself as a child. And we know how those kinds of cycles of abuse happen. Right.
Mm-hmm.
He had just gotten out of a 10-year sentence in a mental institution. He was literally carrying his bag of effects with him that he got out of the mental institution. Now, we might ask, did Rosenbaum do something to sort of provoke Kyle Rittenhouse? Rosenbaum was certainly a belligerent person on the streets that night, and there is video. I have seen it of protesters and other people who were on the ground that day, who are clearly on the BLM side of these events, encouraging Rosenbaum to get away. They are doing everything in their power to keep him steady and stable and to not allow these kinds of confrontations. And Rosenbaum, by all accounts, it's on video, was openly belligerent to the people carrying rifles, the militia members, the Boogaloo Boys. And I absolutely, there's video of this. I absolutely believe that he was, saying words to that effect. Everybody else who was standing there that day said this guy is kind of a loon. This guy is a weirdo, but he's clearly no threat because he's completely unarmed. Right.
Mm-hmm. Unlike Kyle Rittenhouse, who has chosen to be there with an assault rifle.
Right. And even
despite the fact that his supposed aim is to go there and help people and offer medical aid, which, he could have done without taking an assault rifle. And we know that because there were people there whose aim was to offer medical aid who went without assault rifles. Right.
One of Rittenhouse's victims, Grosskreutz, was carrying a pistol, but he was there. He was actually a sort of trained medic. He did like protest medicine and riot medicine, and he carried a gun for personal protection, but he was carrying a handgun, not a long rifle. Rifle definitely has a very different kind of affect when you're carrying it around. Which, and
let's face it, that's the whole point.
Well, right.
That's why he took that.
Right. Exactly. Now, I don't know. He was young enough. He may not have owned a smaller weapon. I don't think we ever got, kind of clarification on that. We know that the weapon was purchased for him by someone who was over the age of 18 in the state of Wisconsin, as opposed to, he was too young to own it at that time. He was old enough to carry it. The legal questions around the rifle, there were some things that seemed kind of iffy there, but ultimately the judge just dismissed those charges because it is apparently a fuzzy area of the law, and I have
because there was a danger that he might be convicted on those ones.
Right. they probably would have convicted him on those. I think there was certainly a very good chance of that. But again, it is a gray area, and so we just kind of go with what we go with, I guess. But but notice how, the all context of like what's going on the streets that day, all context of who Rosenbaum was, of who any of these people were, except for a threat to Kyle Rittenhouse gets just taken completely out of the equation. And Tucker is, this is an edited interview. Tucker is clearly, he's crafting this as a way of lionizing Rittenhouse. That's what's going on here. This isn't a search for truth. This isn't like a question. This is what this is. So all the complex, messy material politics is just edited out, and it becomes well-intentioned, baby-faced, all-American working class kid goes to try to help and gets threatened by a dangerous maniac and defends himself. Tucker is, whatever else he is, he's very skilled at crafting narratives. Yep, absolutely. And again, we will talk a lot more about that in the next episode, and about the sort of open flirtation with overtly white supremacist and overtly white nationalist language in these kind of online spaces. But I think it's worth doing a little shift now and talk about, because this isn't about Rittenhouse goes on Tucker Carlson. Rittenhouse went on a bunch of these things. I didn't even include all of them.
He's been doing so many media interviews. He's been canceled, I think.
Yeah, no, clearly. He's been canceled. He's been, he will say, no, I'm not interested in a media career. I'm not interested in, being this kind of person. I just want to go and be quiet. I want to go to ASU, Arizona State, and I want to I'm thinking about getting a nursing degree, and then like going to law school and becoming a lawyer, and I can like take down these like evil prosecutors, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, hey, actually, if you did want to be a criminal defense attorney and serve in a public defender's office, you might actually learn a few things about how gingerly you were treated in your case. That might be good for you, but somehow I don't think that's where this is going to go.
No.
But he did. I think it's worth highlighting that he did, like a day or two after Tucker, he did Charlie Kirk's show. And Charlie Kirk is the founder, quote unquote, of Talking Points USA, TP USA. TP? For my bungle? He is in his mid-20s even now. And I know all the small face memes that people share. And I don't really, I'm just like, kind of whatever. It doesn't mean anything to me. But then I actually start watching a video of this guy, and I'm like, this guy really does have the tiniest face. Like it feels like,
Wow.
Anyway.
Wow, you went really low there. I was expecting I was expecting you to rise above all that, but you went right I'm very disappointed in you.
It's very true. It's very true. Anyway, so he gets Kyle Rittenhouse on his show. They have a very lovely conversation, just walking through
and friendly
all of Kyle Rittenhouse's talking points about how he was just self-defense. I'm just a non-political guy, not really interested in all this stuff. We're just going to kind of go on. And sitting right next to Charlie Kirk is none other than Jack Posobiec. Now, Jack Posobiec back in 2015, 2016, 2017, right up until the Unite the Right rally, spreading some real 1488 shit. Like he was getting really up there. He had people working for him who ended up being like actual like white nationalist terrorists, like Bull Patrol affiliated people. This was a couple of years after, they worked for him. But Jack Posobiec he's right on the edge of being a full-on Nazi. And I think he is a Nazi. He just knows better than to talk about it openly in public these days. And so he gets to sit and hang out with Charlie Kirk and just kind of give, this fawning interview to Kyle Rittenhouse, because Posobiec was one of the initial people who was really kind of tweeting hard in support of Rittenhouse this entire time. Part of this whole social media experience, it has been, for Rittenhouse, has been the support he's gotten from these extremely kind of far right figures. We will get into much more of that here shortly. But I think it's worth, this is the intro. This is the beginning of the Charlie Kirk conversation with Kyle Rittenhouse. And if you thought this was going to be kind of a softball interview, they start off with asking the really tough questions here. And I think it's worth highlighting.
I hope you got strong stomachs, listeners.
Oh yeah, this only gets worse from here. Believe me. Like this is the dividing line between the happy-go-lucky fun stuff and the really, really dark material. By the way,
yeah,
this is if you want to gaze into the gaping maw of like right-wing dipshit evil, this is what we're going to start doing from this point forward.
Here we are.
And Charlie Kirk, this is just the beginning of this. Okay, but think about what we're about to play, and think about what this kid did and what questions are not being asked of this kid in this. So this is remarkable.
Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of the Charlie Kirk Show. Really important interview here. We're honored to be able to have it. First, we have Jack Posobiec, who's going to be co-piloting this, who earned I guess you could say, the ability to have this conversation. But of course, the main reason we're all here, Kyle Rittenhouse, everybody, is here on the Charlie Kirk Show. Also, with Dave Hancock, family spokesperson, and someone who's really been there for Kyle the last year. And I look forward to talking about that. Kyle, welcome to the Charlie Kirk Show.
Thank you so much for having me, Charlie.
Well, Charlie, hold on. I think there's some other people who need some introductions.
Oh, you're right. So we have Bailey and Milo. Kyle, tell us who Milo is.
So Milo is my dog. I got him in January to help with everything that's going on, somebody I can help train. Man's best friend.
Milo's a great dog. So throughout the last year, you've obviously been through a lot. First, let's talk about you as a human being. Talk about how Milo's helped you through that.
Well, Milo's a smart dog. He knows when I'm having down days. He'll come up to me and, hey, pet me. And then he has his best friend, Bailey, who they just wrestle around. Bailey pretty much raised Milo, and they like to wrestle around and tussle.
Ba 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 ba. Here's Charlie, and on the show tonight we have Kyle Rittenhouse. You are correct, sir.
Yes. If anything, I mean, you're not even you, Jack, and the listeners are obviously not viewing this, but this is literally they're sitting. They have the dogs in between this kind of like panel of chairs, and they're scratching their ears and kind of doing, and like they're cute dogs. Don't get me wrong, but you're interviewing someone who like killed 2 people at a protest for racial justice. Yeah. And you're talking about his dogs. His dogs just get to show up at the interview. There's a later interview that we're going to play, and his dogs are also there at that interview. So apparently he's doing the big media tour, and they just bring his dog on. They just have like so much like warm talk about like, oh, we know this has been really hard for you and traumatic, and we're really glad that you have this this big support network. And that's the fucking tone of all of this shit, right?
Yeah. It's been so hard for you, Kyle, almost being held responsible for your double murder.
Exactly.
He says honored. He says we are honored to have Kyle Rittenhouse.
Right. And then they all fucking talk this way. They all fucking talk this way because
of course they feel that way.
Now, it's worth kind of comparing this to like the Catholic Covington
kid. He put down 2 of the people they think are just subhuman scum that need to die. So exactly. Of course they feel that way.
All the charitable rioters who are out there burning cars, clearly committed greater crimes than Kyle Rittenhouse, who killed those people.
Of course,
clearly. It is worth comparing, Kyle Rittenhouse to someone like Nicholas Sandmann, the Covington Catholic kid, who was he was at this Right to Life march, and he kind of got up in a Native American man's face. There, a lot of the right wingers will not agree with the way I'm characterizing that, but I don't care. I don't care what they have to say. He also got to do a bunch of these like media blitz tours, but the thing with Nick Sandmann is he has absolutely no charisma whatsoever. He is just an absolute blank slate of like white boy stupidity. And he has no ability to actually kind of make media appearances. Rittenhouse has a real talent for this. Like you can, particularly when we get into, later down the line, Rittenhouse can actually like handle it, talk, into a microphone, and, can kind of josh with hosts and do all this kind of stuff. Rittenhouse has a career in this if he wants it. I mean, and he seems to want it really, really badly right now, despite anything that he's ever said. So he also did a show. Now, I never heard of this show. I don't know how he got connected.
Look, this guy could start a podcast tomorrow, and in a week he'd be making enough, to live on for 10 years.
Oh yeah, I know, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, he's got full support of this entire like grifting network. There's a website where he's still raising money for his legal funds because he's planning to sue all the like lying media organizations like the Washington Post who told all those lies about him. So that's gonna go great. That's gonna go great. I can't wait for him to discover that his current lawyer is probably going to grift off of him as well and settle these cases for what are effectively lawyers' fees, which is what happened to Nicholas Sandmann. As he was like, oh yeah, we're gonna sue the Washington Post for $500 million, and they got $500,000, which you basically that's lawyers' fees and a nuisance fee. That's what he ended up getting. That's there's no way that like a civil jury is going to find for Kyle Rittenhouse in any of these cases. I mean, it's just the law is just too clear. First Amendment law is just too clear. But look,
that's what's going to happen. He's either going to get a job on a network, or he's going to start his own show, the Kyle Rittenhouse Show, on YouTube or whatever. And as I say, within a week, he's going to be making more money than you, listener, yes, you specifically, will ever see in your fucking life. And that's what for killing 2 people.
Absolutely.
Because there's an economy out there for people that want to pay people to kill the people that they think need to die. Basically, that's what's going on here.
Exactly. Another media appearance he did on this show called Banfield, which again I'd never heard of before I found this interview. He recorded this on about the same day as the Charlie Kirk interview, or at least it's released within hours of each other. So I don't know exactly which one came first or how this media thing happened, but this is about as close to an actual challenging question he gets at any point during this process. So, Charlie Kirk and Jack Posobiec are like, oh yeah, let's talk about your dog. Here's what the real challenging one sounds like.
Finally, some real journalism coming up.
And are you aware, either during trial or now?
I also just want to note, just apologies to the listeners, that whine that's in the back of the audio, that's in the original. Like I grabbed this straight from YouTube. This is a professional media organization that has like a level of white noise in their audio production that I wouldn't accept in this podcast. I don't know. I don't know how they produced that. It's funny that when I was watching it on YouTube, I didn't even really notice the hum, but once I got it into my earphones for podcasting, it suddenly, I thought I had downloaded the file wrong. I went and re-downloaded it and looked at the video again. And it's like, no, it's actually there in the original. So please, Jack, this is how they want this audio to be perceived. So please don't correct this. All right.
I was going to say, firstly, white noise is a very good phrase for this. And secondly,
Yes.
I'm going to take care not to remove this
Yes.
background whine.
Yes, very much.
The listeners need to hear this.
The listeners need to know what level of production these things are on. Yeah. So
How big this became in America, your story, your trial, the polarization, were you aware of all of that?
Not for the first 87 days I spent in jail, but once I got out, I slowly started to realize that people are using this case as a cause when it should never have been used as a cause for their own political agendas.
Tell me what it was from your perspective, from that moment that you were trying to describe what was happening to you and you became seized with a feeling. Walk me through that moment.
Well, what happened when I broke down is I have PTSD, and I don't really break down, but something in it, like thinking about all the answers and like reimagining in my head, it made me have a PTSD episode.
So your lawyer mentioned it might have been a panic attack.
Yes, that's what it was.
Does this happen often?
Sometimes, not as much as it used to. But occasionally I will.
And what triggers it?
If I'm really deep in thought thinking about it and I don't go through not the preparations, but I don't calm myself down in time, or I forget to breathe.
But thinking about the incident itself, does that bring it on?
Sometimes it really depends on the day.
So critics will say on the stand, you had a tough time describing the sequence of events that happened. But then on Tucker Carlson, it was as though it was a normal conversation. How would you answer to that?
Well, I wasn't fighting for my life when I was on the stand. I was fighting for my life on the stand. I wasn't fighting for my life when I was on Tucker Carlson's show.
I love how the word preparation slips out there and then he tries to pull it back.
Right, exactly. And of course, yes, he's prepared for the interviews. He is very clearly prepared for these interviews. It's obvious that's how these things work. But of course, he can't say it in so many words and say like, oh yeah, we went through, all this stuff. I was just describing what happened to me. And I just had this PTSD episode very conveniently right there on the stand. I just had this moment. And now when I'm talking to Tucker Carlson, I can go through these details in as much detail as he wants. And it doesn't give me any kind of pause. But I was there. I was fighting for my life, you see, on the stand.
The thing about that is that if that's true, it's still very revealing, because what he's saying is, well, when I thought there were going to be consequences for me, I got upset about it. But now that I know I'm safe, I can contemplate the fact that I killed two people with equanimity. Exactly.
Now I can do it. It doesn't bother me at all. I have my exercises I go through, and I just can talk about it. It's fine. I can
talk about the incident.
The incident, right?
As they call it,
When I killed two people and injured a third. Those.
And the bit where he moralizes about people turning it, using it for their political purposes as well. I mean, where the fuck do you get off, you slimy little
Yeah, because if there's one thing that we know about Tucker Carlson and Charlie Kirk and Jack Posobiec is that they would never attempt to use an incident, to use a person or a news story to push a political agenda. No, they're just straight shooters.
those two would never batten on human tragedy like, giant bloated vampire bats in order to suck out all the influence for their fascist politics that they possibly could. They'd never do that, would they?
Yeah, clearly, those, unlike the lying media types over at the Washington Post and the New York Times, no, those people are despicable scum who are just lying about me all the time. But, the figures that I like are the ones who treat me with kid gloves. And when I found this next show, it was, just a light opened from heaven. Because it turns out that what we've been listening to so far is Kyle Rittenhouse on good behavior, right? This is Kyle Rittenhouse really kind of talking in this kind of like the media crafted tone, and really sort of like bringing his this is Sunday best Kyle Rittenhouse, if you understand. This is him really kind of being on his best behavior and working off of notes and using the right language and everything. But I don't think, except for that first clip in the interrogation room, I don't think we've ever seen the real Kyle Rittenhouse until this thing I'm about to do, that I'm about to subject you guys to, because this is from a fairly new podcast called You Are Here, which I hadn't heard of until I found it from Googling for Rittenhouse appearances. So I guess thanks to Kyle for that, because boy, this is one for the ages. And is hosted by Cindy Watson, who is a far-right Australian woman who appeared on Red Ice Radio back in 2018, talking about Australia's lax immigration rules and Islamophobia being like perfectly fine, and the invaders, and basically doing the full-on great replacement stuff. And Eliza Schaefer, who was on the ground and actually interviewed Kyle Rittenhouse before he shot people. Like, he was actually one of the right-wing people who was on the ground at the time. Elijah Schaefer recently posted a meme of the McCloskeys of, I forget the guy's first name, but it's the couple in St. Louis who pulled out guns on their St. Louis lawn, on their manicured lawn, when some Black Lives Matter protesters came out. But the meme is literally, I just want to grill, with McCloskey standing in front of a Sonnenrad, which is the black sun of Nazi symbolism. So Eliza Schaefer sharing literal far right accelerationist, black pill Nazi memes on his Twitter account. And I'm sure if you asked him about it, he'd say, "Oh no, I just didn't notice that. It's just a meme, bro." Well, they talk a lot about memes on this show apparently, and as it turns out, if you listen to this long enough, you're going to discover that Kyle Rittenhouse and Eliza Schaefer have been like sharing memes back and forth for a long time now. And they're good buddies. And so I think Rittenhouse really lets his guard down to a great degree. And I have excerpted from this 2-hour episode. I've got several minutes of clips. We're going to dip in and out of this, and I don't know how much of it we're going to get to, but it is, if you want to know who Kyle Rittenhouse really is, I've never met the man, but I guarantee you this is much closer to his actual opinion about what's been happening in his life for the last year than whatever bullshit narrative he was trying to sell on the stand, or what he's done in the media appearances previously that we've played. Shall we get started?
Yes, let's get on with it.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, optimistically speaking, you look happy, you look healthy. Are you lifting weights or what, dude?
I've been lifting the forks, eating the steaks off the plate, working on my biceps and working on the jaw muscles, eating the food.
At least you still have both those biceps. I will say, I know he's like, oh shit.
Bicep is a particular meme word around the Rittenhouse meme, kind of landscape, because Gage Grosskreutz lost half of his right bicep when Kyle Rittenhouse shot him. And so Rittenhouse is working on those biceps, selling the meme. But then Eliza Schaefer goes on and goes, well, at least you still got both of yours, unlike that other guy, ha ha ha. That's what's going on in that little moment there.
That's right. Yeah. That's real comedy, when you immediately explain the other guy's joke to the audience. That's
right. Good. And when you are, mocking the victim, ultimately, that's right, all this is, right? He is mocking. He shot this guy who lived, who got on the stand and who testified about his experience. And Kyle Rittenhouse is now mocking him because That's what this is.
Yeah.
They're going to go on and talk about the prosecutors in their case, Aaron Rittenhouse's case. Well, let's just hear it from Rittenhouse, shall we?
Yeah, let's let Kyle speak for himself because it's very illuminating.
All of us here, I think, were exceedingly, well, we've all been behind you the entire time. And we were trashing Binger a whole lot. That was fun. What was it like to be in a courtroom with that man?
So Binger is like, you're looking at somebody going to 8th grade prom, wearing their Star Wars pin on their shirt. And then you have the fat guy lunchbox.
The small head?
Yeah, give him a ham sandwich to leave you alone.
Dude, we started saying that a binger is like when you've had too much whiskey instead of whiskey dick. It's like you're actually like, oh, how was that sex? And you're like, oh, I was a binger. Like it's just a disappointment, like all around. Poor guy, and he had his little trans flag, like BLM stuff on at another court hearing. Like what an absolute loser.
Did he really? Did he?
Yeah, he was wearing some sort of another pin. No, not during your trial. But he was just wearing a pin at another point too. That was like, I think it was like the fist, like the BLM thing, and it's just so funny because these people were so biased.
Yeah. Definitely not a political charge case.
Oh, right.
No, it was very.
Oh, Kyle, he was wearing a BLM pin, and now you recognize the politically charged nature of Black Lives Matter. Oh, gee, such a knowing about politics, Kyle. Hold on.
I thought he was a supporter.
I thought you were a supporter of Black Lives Matter. Okay. Oh, they do ask him very briefly about that, and then immediately move on into like some other topic. I was gonna like clip it and kind of pull it out here for you, but like it was so quick. I guarantee you, there's a producer who like put the kibosh on that immediately, like behind the scenes. It was kind of astonishing, and if he had actually given an answer, I would definitely have played it for you. But it was so quick, and it was just so like immediately like swerve into like some completely other topic. They just get off onto a riff at that point. So I apologize for that. I have enough from this show already, so didn't need to put that in. But again, I think it's instructive to go through this, and these are excerpts that I have clipped, so it's all like this though. I promise you, I am not giving you like the worst possible version of this. Like there's no, sort of like stepping back and kind of getting the nice version if you watch the whole thing. It's slightly out of context, but it's absolutely in context. This is what the entire episode sounds like. Is they're riffing about memes with a man who killed these two people. That's what they're doing. They do this for 2 straight hours.
And the concentration on memes and the very mutual riffing on this very online discourse, that gives us a pretty hefty clue, I would say, on how Kyle Rittenhouse came to be the kind of person who thought, oh, Black Lives Matter are demonstrating, I'd better go there with an AK-47.
And there were clips of him a couple of weeks before the shooting in which he was standing outside of a CVS, and he's saying on audio, you can't hear him, but you can't see him, but he's saying, and like the buddy who recorded it verified it was him, and he's saying, I wish we could just shoot those looters at the CVS. And there was a video of him apparently physically assaulting a young woman several months ago at school or something. There's none of that was allowed to come in at trial, and I think reasonably so.
Absolutely.
Criminal defendants have the prejudicial, all that sort of thing. But I think you and I can look at this kid and realize there's a lot more darkness there than the sunny version that he wants to present to the world.
Yeah, no, so, it's absolutely right that stuff that's not relevant to the particular case under trial doesn't come into the court case. That's absolutely right. You and I are not subject to those constraints. We're talking about the man generally, and it's clear that he's a vicious little right-wing thug.
Yeah, and he was very proud to do what he did that day. Pretty clearly. Yeah.
And the word thug, of course, has different connotations in Britain. I realize it's racially charged in America.
It's racially charged in like 2 completely separate contexts, because it's also the thuggy, the racism against the Indian uprisings and the and that subcontinent.
We're going to leave this in. I just wanted to check that because as far as I know, it doesn't quite have the same racial connotations in Britain as it does in America. I don't mean it that way. Obviously, I mean he's a violent little criminal. That's what I mean.
Right, exactly. And
but it's
you can certainly
amazing
kind of
how,
divorce it. Yeah, go ahead.
It's amazing how enchanted they're absolutely enchanted with him, aren't they? How witty he is and how funny. They're just every time he comes out with one of his bon mots, they're like, "Oh wow, you're so funny, Kyle." They're
And,
practically giving him a blowjob on camera.
Oh, we'll get to that.
I guess we will.
He's literally calling his prosecutors, like Binger. They call it, that's the last name of the lead prosecutor in the case. And they don't like his hair because he has kind of spiked hair. I guess he's 40 years old, but he's got this. He looks like he's trying to make himself look younger. I guess for the I don't know. But they make fun of him because they think he looks like metrosexual, or they think he's they keep talking about how he's actually he wants to watch his wife's boyfriend, and they're basically just emasculating him,
he's
right
a
there.
cuck,
And
you mean?
He's a cuck. Yeah, he's a literal cuck. They're calling him a literal cuck. Now, I went and looked, and I couldn't find anything where, if Binger is polyamorous, that wouldn't bother me in the slightest. If he's a swinger, none of that matters to me at all.
I don't like prosecutors, but swingers and polyamorous people, I haven't got a problem.
Swingers and polyamorous people. In fact, if you're, let's get off this topic. This is gonna go. But of course, it's not meant to, kind of comment on, Binger's, kind of personality, or how, it's just meant to emasculate him. And then, of course, the other prosecutor, they just call him Lunchbox because he's apparently overweight. And so it's just just give him a ham sandwich and it'll leave you alone. It's and you got some of this in the Charlie Kirk interview as well. I mean, they did, kind of play those memes. But it's so much worse on this You Are Here show that I left it out of the kind of Charlie Kirk segment. But all right, let's get back into this. Trust me, this gets worse.
Are you fair? No, but okay, so like you were saying, it's you were in this courtroom and you're with this dude who it's pig man
who does his hair like a unicorn. He just has a straight up unicorn point in his hair.
At the end of the episode, at the end of the podcast, they get their viewing audience, their live viewing audience, to meme a bunch of rainbow dildos on his head in place of the slightly spiked up hair, and then they show the best ones to the audience. So this is the level of sophistication that this show has. All right, moving on.
Well, I sort of knew I was gonna win when the Binger, we'll call him the Binger, lied in his opening statement saying I chased down Mr. Rosenbaum, which is factually incorrect. No matter how you look at the case, it's just not true.
All right. This is disputed, by the way. And they tried to play video evidence that Rittenhouse may have actually lifted his weapon or threatened Rosenbaum previously, and I believe there were witnesses that were kind of talking in that direction, but it was never proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Obviously, and there's a lot of kind of murkiness there as to exactly what the sequence of events. There's a lot of conflicting testimony. Rittenhouse is obviously selling his version of these events, and so again, we have no reason to trust the prosecutors. I'm sure they did some fucked up shit in this case, but there's also no reason to trust Rittenhouse. House's version of events here in particular.
He dodges that in his closing argument, showing Rosenbaum chasing me down and grabbing my gun. So everything he said was just factually incorrect.
So you're saying he just lied? I mean, you're saying factually incorrect, but I guess
I don't know if it was
lies.
by negligence or omission. He just did not have a case.
But he still tried.
Well, he also had video evidence that proved what he was saying was wrong.
Exactly.
And he still kept saying it. It's don't believe your eyes, believe what I'm telling you.
Yeah. Like Jack Posobiec posted the meme, played in reverse, and it'll show Kyle chasing them down.
Yeah.
Good buddies, Jack Posobiec and Kyle Rittenhouse, birds of a feather.
And just to be clear, these issues that they're just stating unequivocally as just disproved, objectively untrue, no basis whatsoever. These are in dispute. These are not established.
No. This is. I mean, obviously the trial is over, and so the jury verdict is considered supreme in terms of the kind of legal liability. Although he may be able to be tried at the federal level, there are lots of questions about that sort of thing. Why that wasn't happening to begin with, and maybe because it was a kind of a political case in the middle of summer 2020, and the Trump administration just decided not to kind of push a legal case, a federal case, but like that's what the whole crossing state lines thing really was about initially, was because it makes it a federally liable case. And I mean, just to highlight here, I put in the show notes an episode of It Could Happen Here from November 10th of this year, and they actually talked to a defense attorney about some of the stuff that's kind of going on in the Rittenhouse case. It's really fascinating to get the words of an actual attorney kind of talking about this stuff. And the defense attorney is like, a lot of the stuff that kind of became memes on the far right in terms of talking about this case were, things that like a reasonable defense attorney will ask for and expect to get, or at least it's a, and we've kind of highlighted some of those here as well. But it was really interesting and really clarifying for me to listen to her talk about, the fact that there wasn't a federal case. And the reason that there's even a trial at all sort of indicates how biased the system is towards Kyle Rittenhouse here, because any other defendant would not only get a state case with like a long list of, concurrent offenses and, but would also get a federal case with a long list of like, you just stack up, prison terms over and over again. And even if you get 10% of what you're asking for, it's a lifetime in prison. That didn't happen in this case, but it happens in virtually every other case as a way of forcing people to, take a deal. And so any other person without the kind of media clout that Kyle Rittenhouse obviously had almost from the beginning of this would have been given, would have basically been buried under the jail. You never would have heard anything else about this after, the initial thing. That is the way the legal system works. And the fact that it didn't work that way for Kyle Rittenhouse is a sign of the effect of white supremacy.
Exactly. Yeah. As always, the true events not only disprove their claims, but they prove the opposite of their worldview. It's not only is he not the persecuted, unfairly targeted victim that he clearly thinks that he is, but his case is actually a test case in white supremacy structural to the legal system.
Exactly. And if you can't see these structural issues, you're going to be a lot more accepting of these fascist rhetoric. Ultimately, but
the car dealership that he went there to protect from being burnt down by the mindless, rioters, it was owned by Middle Eastern people. So how can it be about race, Daniel?
Clearly. Diving back in.
It's true. Let's talk about this. Cause like, obviously before we even get into this, I think it's safe to ask, like, do you suffer with like any sort of PTSD from that night, or is it cool if we just talk about it?
Well, I have PTSD, but the best thing to do is joke about it.
Yeah.
I was like, there's a lot of jokes to be made. We got a couple more hours.
We got to fill out another 2 hours. I hope so.
Like Brandon Herrera says, the AK guy, he's from Texas, I believe. The best way to cope is with memes.
Yeah, and we sent each other some good memes. We have some good memes. I think we actually do have some memes.
Brandon, did you get our memes?
I think we do.
He did. He got our memes.
Okay. All right. So we just want to look at some of these memes. They're very good.
Yes.
Some of these memes may or may not have been sent to me by a famous TikToker, but I will say this. So I just want to know if you've seen these ones. Can we go to
the famous TikTok reference there? A little bit of an obscure reference if you're just getting the clip out there, but the famous TikToker is 4 Doors More Whores, which is Kyle Rittenhouse's old TikTok before he deleted it after he killed 2 people.
Right, I see.
And so what's being said there is that Kyle Rittenhouse has been sharing memes with Elijah Schaefer and others during this entire process. At one point, Rittenhouse says, they had to take my phone away because of all the memes. I was sharing too many memes. He has been deeply invested in this, right-wing subculture, this kind of like internet subculture as a hero, and been treated that way by these people for virtually the entire time that since August of 2020. He is deeply invested in this. There is a behind the scenes network that has been supporting him, not just financially, but through these kind of media appearances. And now we see the fruit of that, both in the acquittal and in this media blitz. We see exactly how this works. They are letting us see behind the mask here. They're openly talking about how these networks are formed and how they are maintained. That's the glimpse we're getting into how this works at this point.
Yeah. And from his point of view, it's it's a dream come true, isn't it? It's the fan writer that gets hired by the show.
Exactly. I mean, if I had, back when I was having the kind of the issues with the bass back in 2019, if I had gotten, like the Young Turks brought me on and made me a hero or something. It's hard to even imagine what that would look like, right? But
well, you'd be on the Jimmy Dore show now. So.
Oh yeah, I'd be on the Jimmy Dore show. So
grateful that it didn't happen.
It would be a much better experience overall, at least for my bank account. For my conscience, not so much. But but there is no like network like this on this at least in our spaces. There are famous podcasters and such, but you don't you don't come out of this and then get to be a big hero on the left. Anyway, we need to play the rest of this or we'll be here all day.
Live a normal life again. I mean, can you ever be normal? Like, is that possible?
Make it normal.
Yeah. He's like, hell yeah. It's like, hey girls, he's single. He knows he's a good shot. He'll protect you.
Drop your snap.
He's not shooting blanks. We know that.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Drop your snap. That's a reference to a Snapchat again, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
Not shooting blanks. Oh, look at how horrified the girls are at the not shooting blanks comment. And then look where this conversation goes.
There it is.
So I saw this one TikTok of this one person, I think she was like 25, and she was like waiting for all the single patriotic moms to take Kyle's virginity. I'm like, too late.
Woo! Oh my God. There it is.
Oh hell yeah!
Wow.
I love Kyle. Well, this is a key thing though too. Is like, I guess I can say this now. It's like through this, the interesting part is like I feel like you've become a good friend because I didn't even know your politics. I didn't know anything about you. And a lot of people have always wanted to use you for their political gain and for their things. Your politics don't fucking matter to me at all. Like, I don't care. I just know that night I met a kid who, I didn't know you were a kid. I don't know what the hell you were doing out there as a kid, but I met a kid.
Hindsight being 2020.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Apparently so is your aim.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I know. So I meet this kid and he's like, nice dude, and you're out there and I see the situation that's going on.
Sir, get off the property.
Yeah, has a gun, tells me to leave. No, but nice dude, didn't kill me. You were the nicest person there that night. I mean, I was with child molesters and like wife beaters, and then there's this guy trying to protect buildings.
It's kind of impressive, actually, when you think about it, that of all the people that you shot at, you killed, probably 2 of the worst on the planet. Congratulations. Good job, you.
Well, it's nothing to be congratulated about. It's something like if I could go back, I wish I would never have had to take somebody's life.
Are you glad that you were, are you, in retrospect, are you sorry that you were in Kenosha, or is that something that, were you glad for your presence there that evening? How do you feel about it looking back?
Well, hindsight being 2020, probably not the best idea to go down there. Can't change that, but I defended myself, and that's what happened.
Yeah, but what she's saying is it's not that no one thinks. Look,
no one thinks that taking a leg. I'm not.
All right, we gotta stop here just briefly. He's bragging about how much pussy he's gotten.
Yeah, yeah.
Like some patriotic mom. That's horrifying. It's actually like Amy Therese was posting about how much she wanted to fuck Kyle Rittenhouse. The other day. Yeah, she's gone full.
He's
she's gone
welcome
full
to
right
her,
and
and she's welcome to him. As far as
yeah,
I'm
exactly.
concerned.
But like going in and then like talking about this, well, I'm sorry I was there that day. In retrospect, 50-50, I would have just stayed home. He said that in a couple other places, but I did what I had to do and I defended myself. And it's like, he became a real man that night. Is something that Eliza Schaefer says in another point in this interview. I might have it in the clips, I might not, but they're fawning over him, right? And they're asking, and the girls in particular, the women in particular, are just, they're more aggressive than the men here. They're spreading an even kind of worse version of this right-wing reactionary ideology. It's like the 2 of the worst people on earth. You killed 2 of the worst people on earth because, both Hoover and Rosenbaum had issues with the law before and had, committed crimes,
and done terrible things. Let's not, we don't have to hide shit,
right.
That's not
we can
our
actually
point.
just tell the truth and say, but that doesn't mean that Kyle Rittenhouse just gets to kill them.
Exactly.
Like, that's not how that works,
I'm saying go out and shoot people in the face. That's not what advocating that at all.
If you had, Sydney's like, now you know what kind of man she wants. But it's like, but if you
Dude,
look at this,
I mean, seriously, if you're a child molester and you're out on the street, I got questions about the efficacy of the justice system.
Now, who I really want to talk about is Joshua Zeminski.
Let's talk about it.
The amateur porn star.
Now, again, we just need to highlight the child molesters just shouldn't be out on the street at all. So the terrible punitive justice system, which got Kyle Rittenhouse got acquitted of his crimes, should have treated his victims even worse because they were the true bad people. You see how this is overtly fascist rhetoric that's getting that's getting cycled through this, but because it's not overtly racist, because it's not really going out there and saying the N-word a bunch of times, and it's not nobody's wearing blackface or whatever, it gets coded as, well, this is just regular conservative thought, and these are just regular conservatives having a conversation about politics. Ultimately, that's all that's what we're seeing here.
The truth is that fascism and quote unquote regular conservatism is converging now. I mean, that's the thing. But,
and that's kind of the thing that I'm trying. That's part of what I'm getting at with this. Certainly with this whole podcast, and that's the whole thing, is that back in 2014 and 2015, there really was this kind of division among this kind of far right, openly anti-Semitic space, these kind of online meme wars, and reactionary conservative politics. There was a dividing line, and they didn't really cross. It has been the political project of people like Eliza Schaefer and Jack Posobiec and Charlie Kirk to build to file the worst of the serial numbers off of the overtly white nationalist Nazi stuff, feed it back into their own kind of media output, and treat it as just kind of ordinary republicanism, this kind of ordinary Trumpism. And if you call that out, well, you're just attacking ordinary Trump supporters who aren't Nazis. They just believe in a certain kind of politics. So they just want to have the ability to express themselves on the internet. And isn't that just, we're not the Nazis. We don't like those swastikas. We put an American flag up, and we spread the same kinds of ideas, and we just don't talk about how the Holocaust is fake, and therefore we're not Nazis anymore. That's the project. That's what the Kyle Rittenhouse thing is demonstrating that. At least to me, when I see this, I see obviously this confluence that would not have existed in the same way 5 or 6 years ago is now just this is mainstream. Tucker Carlson is the most watched single cable news program in the United States.
Yeah, that is what this selection of clips really dramatizes for us. Right. The bare minimum amount of laundering to get it in there into the quote unquote mainstream of conservatism. In exactly the same way that in that clip we just heard, they're doing the bare amount of arse covering plausible deniability, sort of respectability gestures. Oh, well, nobody's saying we should just go and kill them, or nobody's saying it's good that you killed anybody. Whereas the entire tenor of the rest of the conversation makes it clear that actually, we are saying that.
Yeah, no, they think it's great that he killed those people. They think it's phenomenal.
Clearly, that's the whole point. That's what everybody's laughing at. That's the joke that they are all sharing in. And
they think he should never have gone to trial. That he was doing the thing that the government failed to do that day.
Exactly.
That if the government, that if the big men who run the police department, et cetera, had the balls to come out and actually deal with these people the way they should have been dealt with, then Kyle Rittenhouse would never have been put through all this. And it's a tragedy that Kyle Rittenhouse had to stand up and fight where his government failed him.
Yeah. That is the essence of the entire thing, from this podcast we're listening to clips of at the moment, through to Tucker, through to Brett and fucking Heather, is, these people, there comes a point where they just need to be put down, where the cops just need to shoot them.
Well, the cops just clearly aren't using enough force. They need to use more force. And someone like Brett and Heather will not go so far as to say, well, actually I think they should be killed, but that's the implication. That's clearly what you're saying. If what you're saying is that the riots and protests had to be stopped at any cost, and that the cops should be able to use more force, that this is threatening our civilization, you are calling for the killing of protesters. That is what you're calling for.
Yes.
There's just no other way around that. Continuing.
Okay, let's talk about Zeminski, Small Dick Zeminski. What's going on with him?
All right. Sorry, I wanted to highlight this real quick. Zeminski was actually, so if you look at the original videos, the reason that Kyle Rittenhouse shoots Rosenbaum, or sort of the instigating incident, is that apparently Zeminski fired a warning shot into the air. He was standing right next to Rosenbaum. Rittenhouse seems to turn. I mean, again, the exact sequence of events is bizarre, but Zeminski that's who Joshua Zeminski is. His name has a particular meaning within this trial, and the people who have been following it closely would certainly know that. So he's a person who is a person of interest in the trial. And then Kyle Rittenhouse's researchers discovered some amateur porn that Zeminski and his girlfriend, it looks like at least 2 girlfriends, engaged in. And so,
which, of course, instantly and immediately invalidates his humanity, that he made some homemade porn. Yeah.
Right. The kid who had the TikTok, 4 Doors More Whores, has opinions about this.
So the state didn't call him to testify. They accused me of pointing a gun at him, which is just false. And they didn't call him to testify. And what I really want to talk about, we found out through my investigator, Todd and Steve, really great investigators, through their investigation, they found out him and his wife are amateur porn stars.
They go on to make fun of the porn. Kyle says, I never actually watched any of it because, I don't want to see it. But then they're eventually kind of talking about how maybe Zeminski was actually fucking Binger's wife and talking about kind of various things of that nature. But I mean, even in that audio, you can hear Rittenhouse is they're amateur porn stars. How disgusting is that? That's what I really want to talk about here is how disgusting these people ultimately are. One more brief clip. I think we're done.
Oh, good. I'm ready to be done.
That's a challenge.
DM me and I'll send you girls.
What kind of girl is Elijah finding for you? What kind of girl? What's she like? Is she cute? Is she tall? What's her?
Is she cute? Well, he doesn't want someone ugly.
Yeah, you know how there's a difference between cute and
she's
hot.
ugly.
You know how there's a sliding scale.
Okay.
Because the hot is
first
more
of all.
psycho.
Yes.
Okay.
You always aim for hot.
Exactly.
But not crazy.
No.
Oh, crazy is the only way to go.
Yeah. Amen. I love this kid. I fucking love this kid already.
They say he's charming, that his looks kill, but that's good. So
yeah, all of the supers so far are just this is such a sweet boy. And he's out here send me the craziest one you have.
I need the crazy hot chicks quickly.
The psychoest chick you can find.
What do you like? What ethnicity? Wow. All ethnicities or what?
All ethnicities.
You like curvy or thin?
I like thick.
Oh,
damn,
okay.
Okay.
It's an American.
Elijah, you're gonna go to some strip club and pick up a bunch of strippers and be like, here you go.
I know. I'm gonna bring 4 whores in my 4 doors. Pull up. Be like, what's up, bitches?
All right. So we got all curvy. I'm presuming. 18-year-old women though are potatoes.
And then they go on to talk about how disgusting modern American women are because they're not feminine enough, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They're all just a bunch of whores. They're riding the cock carousel. It's all the same old bullshit. But yeah,
same old conservative fear and loathing.
Yeah, exactly. But Kyle Rittenhouse, Mr. 4 Doors More Whores, and look, I don't blame a 17-year-old for having a shitty TikTok name. It's whatever. But if Rosenbaum had a 4 Doors More Whores as being his TikTok name, and that kind of came out, that would be an impingement on his morality, right? That would mean he's a disgusting, vile person who deserved to be shot. But Kyle Rittenhouse, because he's just a good old American boy at heart, they can literally sit and talk about what kinds of ethnicities of girls he likes, and try to get him laid live on air after he just murdered 2 people and was acquitted for it. And this is just entertainment. This is just a funny show. This is just a fun hangout. And people in the comments are donating money to Kyle's fund, to donating to his website. And they're talking about, how much of a hero is, how strong he is and how composed he is and how much one of them even says, I've got a baby on the way and I'm going to name him Kyle if it's a boy. This is the level that this kid is getting at this point. This is who Kyle Rittenhouse is. That's who Kyle Rittenhouse is.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think the word is hypocrisy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's even beyond hypocrisy.
It's not a surprise,
right? But it tells you what you need to know about the way the way that this kind of social media campaign and the way that these kind of YouTube shows and these podcasts, the way that all this is a microcosm of how these kinds of ideas become acceptable, right? Is that you put this one kid, you put the symbol onto him, and then because you're his buddies, all of a sudden he gets to be a part of it. He gets to come into it. He gets money from it. He gets attention for it. He's appearing at the TPUSA event the weekend that we're recording this. He has this career if he wants it. And it's pretty clear from what we've seen, regardless of what he's saying about going to ASU and going into a nursing program, it's clear that he is very happy to have this kind of attention. Since this interview, He went on Steven Crowder's show. He went on Glenn Beck's show. I don't have any clips from that. I just ran out of fucking time, and we played enough of this guy already. But it's all like this. The Steven Crowder interview is even slightly less relaxed than this You Are Here podcast episode. It was amazing to see Steven Crowder kind of out-edged by someone else in that space. But yeah.
Yeah, but I think we've made the point. I think this selection of clips really illustrates, firstly, the truth about Kyle Rittenhouse, and secondly, the way in which the same event can be presented differently to different niches in this far-right media ecosystem, and the way that doing that, they pull together to create a far-right coalition, which, is, while it phrases itself differently at different levels, it's in lockstep ideologically, and they're united around, as I say, the same old conservative fear and loathing and hatred of the people who just need to stay in their place, which is precisely why Kyle tooled up in the first place.
Exactly. All right, that's it. Sorry, long episode. Happy Christmas, everyone.
Yeah,
this will probably be released right around Christmas, so enjoy your holiday listening, I suppose. But
enjoy the end of December, however you conceptualize it.
Yes,
and thanks very much for listening to us for 100 episodes and change, because we've also done bonus episodes which you can have access to if you give even as little as $1 a month to my Patreon or Daniel's Patreon.
Yes. And every bit of support is wonderfully accepted, especially right now, as this is at the time of this recording my only source of income. So if you can give me a little bit extra, that would definitely help me out, at least until I can find something. Either make this, professionalize this, or find something else within more ordinary employment. So that would be much appreciated. But
absolutely.
So
that would be great. We're very grateful for every penny or cent that we get from all our patrons, and you're all amazing people. But our listeners too. It's amazing support just to listen, retweet, talk about us, whatever. And we love you all, and thanks for tuning in. And yeah, as I say, have a good end of December, and we'll see you on the other side. That was I Don't Speak German. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show or found it useful, please spread the word. If you want to contact me, I'm @_Jack_Graham_. Daniel is @Daniel E. Harper, and the show's Twitter is @IDSGpod. If you want to help us make the show and stay 100% editorially independent, we both have Patreons. I Don't Speak German is hosted at idon'tspeakgerman.libsyn.com, and we're also on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify, Stitcher, and we show up in all